All right, meeting is started. So what has happened? Oh, this is wrong. All right, so one spec that was added this week is the spec for the memos that was put up by Sasha. I read through it and put up some comments. I think, Rustlin, you wanted to read through it, right? Did you have time?
Haven't time to go through it in details yet. Read through it mostly. Should check it out in next couple of days. But it's pretty much the stuff that we have discussed with her on chats. So I should be mostly up to date.
Yeah, I think other than my few small comments, I guess everything seems fairly reasonable. So I'm not sure if we want to get that as a feature for somebody to work on for the next version, or if we'll leave the spec as is until we have more bandwidth to work on this.
I think I'm gonna look through your comments and the details of the spec today, and then we can decide maybe to switch it up into iterations like the export feature. We can cut off on features for the what we are working currently on.
All right. So then if when you read through it, if everything looks good and you have no further comments, could you merge the PR then?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, and then PRs merged this week. So as I mentioned in the Slack channel, we merged a bunch of refactoring stuff. So we now have Firefox going on all of the CI builds. So it should not affect the CI build length very much. So that's good. One thing it does change is whenever you do testing, you have to now run a test prepare command before you run the test. If you try and run the end-to-end test before you run the test prepare command, it will fail. Basically, the test prepare builds the executable or the plugin, and then the actual tests, instead of building anything, they just load up the plugin and run it. Okay, so there's two advantages. One is in our CI. So this is the reason I did it, because in our CI, now it creates the extensions, and then in parallel, it runs the Firefox tests and the Chrome test. But the other advantage is that now if you want to refactor some integration tests, or feature tests rather, you can build the app, like the plugins once, and then when you change your test files, you don't have to rerun the test prepare. You can just rerun the end-to-end test, and that'll run your new test code, but it'll not rebuild the app, so it's much faster. But just keep in mind. And then we merged the polymorph change. I think that's fine. Yeah, we now show there's fees for intra-wallet transactions. So it's a nice picture if you haven't seen it. Now if you send to yourself, you should now see an intra-wallet transaction, and then the fee is added in the transaction details. Right? I don't think you see on the screenshot. Okay, yeah, you do. But so in this case, because I sent to myself, the amount on the right is just equal to the fee. This is ever so slightly different from the mobile UI, but it reuses some of their code, and it's the same idea. And hopefully that fixes one of the bugs people have had when they sent funds themselves, but I don't know how reliable that bug was to reproduce. But hopefully that should fix the bug if this was the root cause.
Here I want to discuss one point, that is it like when we export the transaction, so it will be what same as the what is on the transaction page, or
Yeah, nothing actually changed inside the system other than there's a new field inside wallet transactions. So if you look up the wallet
we can export it as withdrawal of fee, basically. It's a withdrawal of 0.17 ADA.
Yeah, so in the wallet transaction, which is the layer between the Malbec stuff and the API, added a new field called fee. That's the only change. The field amount did not change. And so I did this for backwards compatibility. So any feature you build should not change in any way, shape, or form. But just be aware there's a new field. So if you need this new field for something, it's now there for you.
So it's just a view label change, right? Like we don't.
No. So it changes the way we use the API. So the Haskell backend, basically, I think the bug is on their side or something. It basically gives you information from the V0 API, which is the API that's no longer be used. It's deprecated. But the way it represents transactions, it's only either to you or from you. There's no concept of like the to and from being the same or that they're different. And so I think that's fixed in the V1 API. But since we are not using the V1 API, we fixed that on our side. It's the same fix they did for the mobile wallet.
Okay, so like my concern was that at API level, the API which is used for exporting and the API which is used for like showing the transactions, then if there is like common change in the backend, then like it's not a problem. Or maybe I don't know, do we really want to make it same or not? That is also a point. So
I think we want to make it to work in the same way, and it should be compatible. I'm gonna specifically check it today. I think I have some intra-wallet transactions in my test wallet, so but it should work the same. Yeah, the change is compatible.
Yeah.
I just
one thing to take into account is that do we want the memos to be saved in the export feature also?
We might add it in next iteration.
Yeah. So it's just something to think about because that's not mentioned in the current spec for the memo feature, but that's because these were done in parallel.
Yeah, we thought about it. There were discussions because in at least some layouts for export, there are comments, like a column for comments and stuff like this. But it might be more complicated because people might not want to export private memos and stuff. So there must be optional switches or something like that.
Right.
And there are like still discussions pending on whether it should be on by default, off by default, and stuff like that.
Right.
So we're gonna try to do it for the second iteration.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, that's all we had for the triage and PRs this week. Now we're in individual progress updates. So I'm going to go first because I wrote down some points. So one, we merged the first version of the export feature, right? So are we ready for a release candidate?
Yep. And also, we should push for the release candidate for Firefox. And the idea is that we should go through QA for Firefox.
All right. And then I also wanted to ask Nico, so did you have time to look more into the Firefox release, or did you want me to take it over from here?
Oh, I haven't.
I'm not sure how much time you have.
Can you repeat it?
Do you have time to keep looking into the Firefox release, or do you want me to take this task?
Yes, it makes sense that I should do it because if I'm going to be doing the Chrome one, there are going to be like the same features. So probably if we want to release the Chrome app, also we want to release right away the Firefox app.
All right. And then the next thing I want to discuss is the German language translation PR that was added. So I don't think we can get this in for the next release if we want to do a cutoff soon, because this PR is from 6 days ago, and we've changed some of the strings since then, so it's ever so slightly out of date. But if we wanted to include this in the next release, we can possibly clean up the remaining stuff. Either is fine, but other than that, is there a reason not to merge this PR?
There is one thing that's missing, and is the term of use.
Oh, you're right.
Do we really
Everything else
want
have like the terms of use in like Japanese, Korean, Chinese simplified, Chinese traditional. But here everything looks good, but we're missing that, and I think it's important.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we've already have a build ready for the release candidate, right? So it doesn't matter if we merge it now because it won't be part of the release candidate.
Oh no, don't merge it. I don't have the release yet.
Okay. Okay, so after we have the release candidate out, let's merge this PR, and then look into getting the terms of use translated to German, and then we'll get all the German folks to get hooked up with Crowdin so they can keep up to date. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. And then that's all I had.
I can continue on my side. So basically, I was playing with the mobile apps, and I think maybe we could go to Yoroi Mobile. To the PRs. I think we are like ready with a release candidate, and right now we are getting access. And I also wrote why we're getting that. So basically, we have like 3 different checks that we are running through Circle CI. The first one is like some tests, and those are passing. Then we have flow, which is also passing, but there is a third one, which is the linter, and that one is not passing. What happened is when we added the translations in Korean, Russian, and Japanese, it's difficult from Galin to know when the linter doesn't pass. So we have some problems related to that, and right now Karina is like fixing those problems, and mostly all of them are like related to the length. So maybe some lines they have like over like 100 characters in one line, right? That maximum 80. So probably that should be done probably today, just like pretty close. And the next thing that also there is an X for is that Nicole is now working in building and compiling like the apps for iOS and Android using Bitrise. And with that, we are going to get like a pretty good check for every change that we do if it's going to impact anything. So after those changes, I'm going to be feeling pretty confident that any change that we did, it's not going to like undo or like destroy something over there, because that was one of the problems before, that something will be changed and only will be like tests in JavaScript, and maybe someone will like manually test it in Android, but it wouldn't work in iOS. And for iOS, the problem is that also you need like a Mac to compile, because it's a simulator and not an emulator. And yep, and going back to the Chinese, I think we're like good to go with the Android release. I disabled Chinese, so it's not going to show up in the menu because we don't have the translations for Chinese. But we do have that for Japanese, Korean, and Russian, and obviously English. So the idea is that we will release with those 4 languages.
All right, awesome. Do you think it'd be worth it for it in the future? Try and figure out how we can merge some of the mobile code base with the web code base. I'm not sure how much of it is mergeable. Like I've read through part of this code, but not all of it. But like some of the code that handles the API is somewhat similar. And in fact, we had to port, a code from mobile to the front end for the intra-wallet transaction. So maybe they should have been joined from the start, ? But that could also be kind of messy. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
I think it would be good to maybe even have code that works the same. Maybe we could use as a model for network. The problem that we have is that front end uses MobX and this project uses Redux. So we want to have difference because of that.
One of the tasks for Mikola when he moved to mobiles after learning the web code base was for him to start looking into maybe how we can unify those code bases, at least in terms of architecture and stuff like that. But because it still needs some active input of time and some work, so after some time when he works on mobiles, we can give him a task to maybe draft some proposals on what stuff we can change or extract, similar parts, something like that.
Right. Well, I assume probably the API layer is the easiest to make unify between the two. So I'd probably start there. And that would probably be almost as good as you can get because the UI is going to be different for sure, just by the nature of it. So we maybe make the API layer joint and then possibly some other partially related stuff. I think that's probably about it.
Join API, would you want it to see it like an external library that we just release and import there and there? What you think it should look like?
As long as if I make a change in for example, the Yoroi front-end code that requires at the same time a change in the API layer, I need to be able to do it in the same PR. So as long as that's supported, that's all that matters. Any way is fine.
Yeah, and we also was thinking for Yoroi frontend to move to Redux. So maybe we can consider that also later.
So we're going to start working in the blog explorer, right? And probably for that, we are going to be using GraphQL. And there is also going to be updates to the API of Cardano. So maybe it will make sense to try to be a little greedy and try to go for everything. So in that way, maybe to try to have only one way to connect to the API for front end, mobile, and also for the blog explorer.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So yeah, in future also maybe we may consider making a desktop application in Electron or whatever when maybe if Yoroi grows, then staking and the D apps added, maybe extension is not the best solution maybe. So at that time that will help to have a common API.
Lauren, you want to take your picture before the meeting or after?
Yeah, I think that's maybe not such a big priority right now. But Okay, yeah, I think the prioritizing getting the API as a separate layer sounds like a good idea. That way we can reuse it between all three components. And also it's something that we could have third-party users also hook into. So that'd also be a benefit. But all right, so who wants to go next?
I can be next. So last week I was working on design for the extension Yoroi front end, and actually there are much done, but also much is to be done for it. And actually also after update of React Polymorph, I've mostly integrated that part in my work, except of skin for input, but mostly it's okay. So basically, mostly the internal pages should be done, and so now from the last of that week, and now I've switched on the Yoroi web, and now I'm working on a homepage on Yoroi web, and also made a PR by fixes on some flow errors on Yoroi web. So basically, that's it for me.
All right, awesome. Ruslan, I think you're the last one.
Yeah, okay. I can... Oh, sorry.
Okay, Ruslan, go please. After you.
Okay. The whole last week I spent working on the Rust part. We were pushing the changes required for new features and also working on trying to integrate their new API. So they implemented new API layer, which is like cool and allows to do all the different stuff that we can do with the current API, and which is more modular and more granular. But it doesn't work. The only bad part, because they try to use new cool library that allows to generate WASM and JS from Rust automatically, and it uses some weird obscure stuff that just refuses to work with our current setup. Like there are some Babel problems or something like that. We spent few days on it and couldn't spend more for now. So gonna try to resume with it later. So we worked on adding new features required to old API. So there are added connectors and into JS Cardano WASM library. And the PR is currently in the final stages. It's ready for merge and review and merge. The tests. So we should be able to use these new features in old API soon. And after this, we will put some limited additional time into trying to get this new API on board, because it's really cool and awesome, but hopefully it will also work. And also was finishing some stuff about the memos and transaction export. And we are slowly planning on second iterations for those features also. So that's it for me for now.
All right. Well, I think that's all we had for this week then. Anybody wants to add some last thoughts?
Yes, I think my feedback is remaining. If you can just refresh the page of GitHub. Okay, before that, like last week I was working on basically fixing the how to say, the changes which is like new React, and we had to change for jest and all those how to say, review fixes for export. Plus, I'm working on like new website for like web and backend. With me, like Nick is working, and he's like I said, the working on him homepage. And now my priority is to anyhow able to run the like we have newsletter functionality, so we have to decide it how to which CDN we should use or the solution for that. So I'm working on that. And also I've added 3 points, and point 1 is something is we should consider to change it, and second and third is maybe like if you see the code that is in English, and password instruction that is new, and the old one is the second point is something related to warning, which is in English. So maybe it's the last 2 points are still not merged, so that's why it's in English. So maybe we should look into that if it is not a bug.
Oh, that's true. Nice catch.
Okay. Yeah, do we agree? We for first point we already discussed it very back, and so I just made it issue so we don't forget it. If you
All right,
want to discuss,
so yeah, let's just make sure that this Korean issue is fixed today, or like as soon as possible, because that's gonna be our blocker for the release candidate. I guess we can start QA without this, and then put this in after.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, and then another thing is, I think next week we won't have a meeting, right? Because I think 3 of us will be busy with the Japan Blockchain Conference. Is that okay with everybody? Do you still want to have a meeting?
Yeah. Okay for me.
All right. So no meeting next week,
the
then.
next Tuesday is 29th. Will we already be busy with all that stuff? 29th is still okay.
I'm confused. So are you saying we should cancel it or should not?
No, I'm trying to understand if we already will be busy on 29th, so that we should move it. Yeah, yeah, probably better to reschedule to be sure. Okay, agree.
Yeah. Okay. So decided then. No meeting next week. Not a big deal. And then we'll restart in 2 weeks from now. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.